We're here with Mike Gates, the Labour MP for Ilford South. Mike, could you tell us a bit about your constituency, please?
Ilford South is part of the London Borough of Redbridge, which is an outer London borough, postal address Essex, but actually we are an outer London borough, and my constituency is the most urbanised part of the borough. We have the Ilford Town Centre, we have the police station, we have the main shopping centre, we also have the main hospital, and we basically are an entirely urban community here. But we have, although we're outer London borough, we have a lot of inner London problems. We have a very, very diverse community. A very large number of people are first, second or third generation immigrants from all over the world. We have a large population of people whose parents or grandparents came from East Africa or South Asia. There are people here from Somalia, there are people here from West Africa, more recently immigrants from parts of the European Union, Central and Eastern Europe, and a long-standing Irish community, as well as many, many people who are Ilford born and bred as well. So it's a very complicated, mixed constituency, but we live together in harmony.
One of the groups that you didn't mention there, and we know that there are a lot of residents, come from Sri Lanka. Could you give us some comments on your views about what you think the current situation is there?
There are in Redbridge around about 5,000 or more people of Sri Lankan origin who are on the electoral register. Obviously they also have children, and so the families, the community is quite large. Most of those people have had to come to Britain in the last 10-15 years as a result of fleeing from the conflict and the civil war in that country. Most of the Sri Lankan community in Ilford are Tamils, they are Hindus, and they are people who have come to Ilford where they've made their homes, and they're doing very well in terms of the education, the achievement of their children, and also many of them are very, very much involved in local businesses. But they are terribly distressed by what's currently happening in Sri Lanka, and the conflict which led to the end of that conflict in a few months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, where now there are up to 300,000 people in detention camps in different parts of the island. And many of my constituents have friends or family who they've lost contact with, and they can't get information about what has happened to their relatives or their friends. And so they are very distressed by this. And clearly there's a separation in some of those camps of the children from their parents, or young men have been taken away for different areas. And the Sri Lankan government has refused access to international media for a very long time, and also they have stopped some of the international non-governmental organisations going in to assess the situation. So there are some quite serious reports coming out, not just about the lack of sanitation facilities and shortages of clean water in some areas, but also allegations of human rights abuses. I am chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House of Commons, and my committee published a major report on human rights worldwide in August, and in that we also commented on the situation in Sri Lanka, and we've called for independent international inquiry into what happened in the conflict. For example, allegations of bombing of civilian areas by the Sri Lankan authorities, and also human rights abuses by the Tamil Tigers, who were taking people and using them as human shields. Now clearly the international community needs to carry out a proper inquiry into that situation, but in addition the people who are in the detention camps should be released now so that they're able to reintegrate into society, because otherwise this conflict, which has been long-standing over decades, will never be solved, because there will be a whole generation of aggrieved people still living in very difficult circumstances for the future. This is the time for the Sri Lankan government to show it is magnanimous and willing to work for reconciliation. Otherwise, they will be building up further problems for the future.
Thank you. We're talking to you during the season of party conferences. Would you like to comment on how you think the Labour Party and indeed the other party conferences have gone?
I was in Brighton all last week and I was really impressed. We went into the conference with a level of uncertainty and some fears, but we've come out of it much more resilient and united. And I believe we've now got a very clear message as well, a clear difference between what Labour is saying and what the Conservatives and, for that matter, the Liberal Democrats are saying. Nick Clegg, the Liberal leader, talked about the need for savage cuts, but he then got in trouble with his party for saying it. But David Cameron and George Osborne in the Conservative Party, they are not in trouble with their party activists for that. They're only in trouble with their party activists because of the rabid anti-Europeanism which exists in the Conservative Party. But the Conservatives would cut now. They would cut while we are still in a situation of a global recession. They would cut even when the recovery is still very fragile. They are in danger then of doing what was done in the 1930s, where recession was made into depression and it lasted several years. What Labour is saying is that we've done exactly the right thing to put money into the economy in order to make sure that the impact of this global financial crisis, which started in America, and the global recession does not lead to the current levels of unemployment, which are bad and increasing, becoming far worse, and also that we need to only bring about reductions in the expenditure in the future when the economy is growing, and that means that we remove the deficit gradually over several years and in a way which doesn't hit frontline services, doesn't lead to cuts in policing, doesn't lead to cuts in the health service or in education or in transport. What we will face at the next general election is a clear choice between those parties who believe in drastic, savage cuts, a slash and burn approach to the public services, and Labour, which says we believe in public services, we believe in public investment. We don't think that you should be ideologically saying you want a small state, which is the Conservative position, and I think sadly may also be the Liberal Democrat position, but that we believe that the state has an important role to protect people, to provide security and also to help with investment in the future. And so I think the next election is going to be a clear choice between Labour investment and Labour protection of the poorest in our society, and also making sure that those who have the broadest backs pay most, rather than cutting benefits and giving cuts in taxes for the very wealthiest, particularly in the 3,000 families, the most richest families in the country, because of the inheritance tax cuts, which is the Conservative agenda. Labour would say we want the 50% income tax rate on those earning more than 150,000 a year. We want those who are earning most to make a biggest contribution. We believe in progressive taxation, and the Conservatives don't.
Thank you. And finally, you've been the MP for Ilford South since 1992, and you've done a lot of good work in the constituency in that time. Are you still as enthusiastic as you were at the beginning about continuing to serve after the next election?
I remember the Conservative government. I was elected in 1992 as a Labour MP under a Conservative government. I won the seat from the Conservatives, and unfortunately we didn't win in 1992. I had to then spend 5 years in opposition in Parliament with John Major's discredited government. I think the prospect of a return to Conservative government is really firing me up. We have to fight very hard to stop that, and I will do whatever I can to be re-elected and to make sure that the Conservatives don't get back in. And if they do get back in, I will fight hard for my constituents, as I did between 1992 and 1997.
Mike Apes, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.